Hello there. Once again, it is Caleb Corey coming at you with another book review. Today we are going to be reviewing Salem's Lot by Stephen King. So this is a really good book. I tried to do a review just a minute ago and I ended up making it a bit too long. And so I kind of figured I would cut it down and really just talk about the book and what I liked about it, what you may like about it, what you may not like about it, stuff like that. So straight up, it's just a really good vampire story. It's kind of inspired by Dracula. Specifically, Stephen King said it was like if Dracula moved to a small American town, what would happen? And I think he does a really good job of portraying this in the book. It's a pretty long book, so there are going to be quite a few characters that are interesting in the book. There's Ben Mears, who is the main character, and he's an author. Then he has a love interest. Then there are some other like children characters, some like younger characters, who I think Stephen King writes really well. I think he writes the younger characters quite well. And there are several books that he uses these same kind of younger characters. And I think it's just a common theme that he writes those characters very well. Something I really liked is the initial setup of the characters. I think he does a really good job of providing backstory, and additionally, the pacing of the book is very good. So it is, let's see how long it is. I think 600 or so pages, 639 pages, and then it has an epilogue as well, which I can't quite remember. Yeah, I think it's just showing like different ways that like people were killed by vampires or whatever after the story ensues. I'm not going to tell too much about the book, but we'll give a gist of it. So it's kind of centered around this house, the Marston house, which is haunted, and that's kind of the main focal point of the book, because this is like the source of the evil. That's kind of where everything goes down. That's where the vampires are attracted toward, and that's where the characters are doing most of the action. And that's what Ben Mears, he actually happens to be writing about this specific house because of some experiences that he had when he was younger as a child. And so that kind of is what inspires him to return to Salem's Lot. And again, I didn't say this, but that's how he returns, is he's coming back to write a story about the Marston house. And perhaps the Marston house is like drawing him in as like a kind of like how it's drawing in the other characters that come into play who are coming there for evil intentions rather than good intentions. But let's see what else. Like I said, the characters are really in-depth. I really think that King did a really good job of setting up the relationship between Ben Mears and his love interest. I think he does it very well. I think sometimes I feel like the sex scenes in some books that I've read are a little bit, maybe not far-fetched, but they just feel a little forced. This doesn't feel like that. It really feels real and romantic and really passionate. I think he did a really good job of that. What else? Okay, so there's one part of the book that's pretty horrific as far as it's just an uncomfortable scene to read. We'll talk about it a little bit. This will be sort of a spoiler, but if you're not comfortable with really horrifying and kind of just despicable scenes, this may be something that is kind of unsettling for you. This could be skipped, I suppose, if you read the book and you really just could not stomach it, because it's not necessarily super pertinent to the story. And yeah, so I'll tell you guys about this. This will be a little bit of the spoiler, but you can skip over this if you don't want to hear about it. This is a discussion of the book, so there will be some details given away, but I'll try my best to keep it to the point of why you should read this story. But anyways, so the characters, it's a husband and a wife. Randy, or Royce and Sandy McDougal. That's not really giving away too much, just their names. The husband is an alcoholic, and it's sort of, it's like a classic abusive husband type of relationship. Comes home, drinks beer, tells his wife to cook dinner, then, which, I mean, awful. It's awful. You shouldn't be beating your wife or anything, obviously, but the horrific part is their infant child, Randy McDougal. So Sandy is taking care of their child and punches their child in the face several times. And then what's really horrifying too is after he has like the bruises on his eyes, and he smiles at his mother because it's a child. They have unconditional love. They don't understand what's going on, but it was just a really horrifying scene. It was kind of hard for me to read through. So that is probably one of the most horrifying scenes in the book. I think it is kind of just like it is like a fantasy novel. It is horror because it is like a vampire book, but more so than it being like a horrifying, scary story, it feels more like reading a fantastical vampire book, and I think it's very good. I really, really like how he employs magic realism in this book. So that's something he does in quite a few of his books. He does that quite a bit in The Stand as well, which I just did a review of. I may redo it just so it sounds a little bit better as well. But I think the magic realism he uses in both of these books is really interesting. But I think in this one specifically, it really helps sell the forces of good and evil working behind the vampirical elements. So there's one point in the book where they use like holy water, and there's like a blue fire that is like described in the book that kind of like surrounds them and is on like an object that they're holding. I'm not even gonna tell you what the object is, but that scene is very, very cool, and it just it really sells that magic realism, and it feels real, and like it's really vivid in your imagination when you're reading it. A few other things that I really liked from this book, I think I mentioned the pacing. It's really great pacing. So what Stephen King does in this book is he has the longer overarching chapters, but he has the sub chapters like kind of in between, or like maybe little checkpoints, whatever you want to call it. So it'll say chapter 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, however many sub chapters he does within a chapter. But it really spaces out the book as well. And then I like that he's done this in The Stand as well, which is a bigger novel. He separates it into like books or parts, so then it'll be part 1 and then part 2. So you finish the introduction to the book, which is mostly like character description and building up the relationships and really like introducing the reader to the characters and building that initial connection. And then it jumps into the main part of the book, the second part that's really going to be the bulk of the action and the vampirical elements and chasing the evil people in the book. So I think that's really cool way, and then it just initially slowly gives you clues and builds the story and builds that connection between the reader and the character, and I think that's very, very well done. Besides that, I think the diction or the word choice is very, very good. Something about Stephen King is a lot of his works are very accessible to the public. They're not like so inundated with higher level vocabulary that you need to stop and look up words, but there are a few that you may not know that you would like to look up, and that's typically what I do. I'll underline it or come back and look up specific words that I don't understand, but for the most part, there's very few words that you will not understand in the book, and the specific words that are maybe a little bit higher level or obscure vocabulary, I feel like he fits in there very well so that it's fitting for the sentence. Another word, like maybe a less complex or high level vocabulary word would work, but it just wouldn't be as, it wouldn't describe the scene or the description or whatever it is quite as well. So I think he does a very good job with word choice for the most part. I think he has some poems in the book that introduce like a chapter, I think, and he has maybe some in the beginning and at the end. I think that's a really interesting thing to do in these books. I think it kind of shows where some inspiration comes from some of his ideas, or maybe he just thought they were interesting and put them in the book as introductions to part 2 or the introduction to the book. So I think that's really cool. I like that there is some explanation of his thought process behind making these books, but not too much, not so much that you're distracted by it. But I think it's a really good vampire book. It's very quick, even though it is a little bit longer, and I think it does what it is. It does it good for what it is. It's a nice, quick vampire book, even though it is a little bit longer. And I think he does the vampirical elements justice. It feels pretty real from the reader's perspective. The vampires feel as if they could exist in reality. I think by using characters that are intelligent or in a profession that's well respected, kind of sells that point more so to the reader that perhaps this could happen, and then maybe I would believe if this person believed because of their authority, or if I had seen it myself. So I think it's very, very good. I think it's really cool to use like a haunted house as a focal point as well, to just kind of add another layer to the story rather than just solely focusing on vampires without like expanding upon how they came to this specific place or anything like that. But I think it was really good. I think it's really impressive how good it is, considering it was only a second novel. But I would definitely check it out. I think it's really good. If you like vampires, if you like quick, suspenseful horror novels, I think this would be a good one for you. So thanks for watching. Leave some comments and likes, and tell me if you liked the book, if you've read it, if you haven't read it, or if you have any suggestions of what else I should read. So thanks so much, guys.